Everyone, how's it going?
Good morning, everybody.
We are live
7:30
from Westport, Connecticut.
It's 7:37 in exile on the west coast of the United States.
Oh, you've been exiled, Bob. What did you do at the UN? How could you?
Yeah, no, I have been exiled until this draconian stay in place order is lifted. This is it's really bad.
So let's hear about that, because I mean, I keep hearing things about West Coast, and I got a lot of people on the West Coast that I work with, but I don't really know what the actual laws are. I've seen people tearing down like that temporary fencing at some of the beaches, and like people just losing it. What's going on?
Wow.
No, people are losing it. I mean, I think that there's a, that old story about, you stick the frog in the water and you turn the heat up and the frog gets warmer and warmer and it acclimates and then eventually, boils to death. And I think there really is.
That's kind of painful death, by the way.
Whatever. But I think that there's this accumulation of it's not negativity, but just uncertainty. And people tend to think, especially in this neighborhood, because it's fairly, I mean, this block isn't affluent, but the area itself is pretty affluent, and people are used to sort of managing their own business and being successful about it. And I think that folks feel as though they're coping better than they actually are. And so it's just all this acting out all the time.
Why are they? So you heard of the term Karens that's out there, right?
Oh yeah, we have Karens and what's the male version? What are they? Ted?
No, so, that's a good question. I forgot what the male version of a Karen is.
Yeah, there is a male version, and I've seen numerous instances where the male version of the Karen has just like lost their collective mind. I mean,
no, you got me curious. I'm gonna
really
look it up.
Remarkable.
Well, how
yeah, no, I'll look it up after the call.
Ken. It's Ken.
It's Ken?
Is it Ted?
It's Ken. Okay.
Ted and Karen.
Karen is Ken.
Like Barbie and Ken? Karen and Ken?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, and there's also a lot of people, I mean, I don't know how you all deal with it. Every time I see you in your homes, you're in an isolated room, except, once in a while a kid sticks their head in, but, you have enough space to spread out a little bit. But for a lot of people, they're spending way more time with their loved ones, quote unquote, than they ever thought they would spend in their entire lives. And for some people, it creates real problems, and they can't.
You're bringing up a really good point. I had this thought the other day. I don't mean to interrupt your thought.
No, that's fine.
But typically, we're the ones asking the questions. So I'm going to give a little bit of color.
Okay.
I never thought I could exist with another group of human beings this amount of time, like just stuck home. I thought I would lose my marbles. I mean, my kids are one thing because, they're kids.
You're talking about your significant other then.
My significant other, I thought for sure I would have killed him by now. And it's okay. Like so far, in fact, I think it's maybe I don't want to say it too loud, maybe gotten better.
Ooh,
really?
There's a little, interesting.
I
guess I'm not going to go down a rabbit hole.
No, I'm not even going to say like nothing dirty, Min. I'm just like in general, because I know where your mind is going.
Where the Irish cream comes from? All right, got it. Totally there.
Here we go. No, but seriously, like there's, I thought for sure, because he's a little bit of a people hater, and I can often be a people hater myself, or at least more of an introvert. I can, on the surface, I might be a little outgoing and chat with people, but behind closed doors, we always people watch, people hate, stuff like that. I can't believe we've gotten along as well as we have over the last 6 months. Locked down all day, every day. I mean, obviously he goes to his office, I go to my office, so we do have that break in the day, but it's been a lot of time together. And I mean, I'm knocking on wood again. I don't want to jinx anything, but so far nobody's died. So
no.
If they did, I'd be worried right now, Elisa.
I know.
But I think that there's some real gold to mine there, you know, because people are looking for those kind of, you know, because people really do feel as though, you know, oh shit, I'm going to be stuck with this person for 6 months and, you know, see them for 2 hours a day when we're not sleeping kind of thing. And now it's just going to be ratcheted up. I think there's gold to mine there because there are people who you know, who need guidance on the ways in which you can kind of create space, back off, cut people slack that you're not used to cutting. There's a whole range of strategies and for, you know, for hanging together in situations that you never thought you'd have to hang together. And I think people need to hear about some of that stuff, you know.
You brought up an
It's a
interesting.
real, you know, in the wellness things that you did really well, one of the things that didn't come up all that much is, you know, this sort of the wellness around relationships and how you know, and
Well,
you know,
but you know that's a very touchy subject, right? You know, one of the things I was taught growing up is relationships is between two people or a family. You don't get involved unless you want to get dragged down the rabbit hole, specifically for the reasons that there's so much drama there that sometimes you just don't need that drama. But it comes down to,
I think that's fair. But I've also, you know, from my standpoint, you know, I've had a whole string of not very good relationships, and B, ironically, have counseled maybe 1,000 marriages, right? So I don't wander into places I'm not invited, but I do wander into places where I am invited, and I've been invited a lot, you know, over the last 30 years. So.
Well, what do you, I mean, here's a question then for you is like, you've been exposed to, you know, obviously situations of folks who were willing to let you into the little circle. Anything like, can you say that you have learned something from those experiences, or you're basically just objectively looking at it as an outsider going in? Because I think the big thing that comes with guidance is acceptance, right? If you want to guide someone, they got to be willing to listen to you and be willing to listen to the advice and adhere to it. A lot of these situations isn't like that. People tend to become very defensive in that sense, where, and it goes the same for this whole Karen thing that we were talking about and relationships. Like, well, I don't know, you know, you haven't been in my shoes. What the hell do you know about my situation? And then it becomes very adversarial in some ways. So I think
Right. Well, that's why you can't go there unless you're invited there, because the invitation cuts through a lot of that defensiveness. Although very often somebody will invite you into that scenario because they're convinced that you are somehow going to vindicate their position and critique another position, right? And it's, you know, it's very, very difficult to get, for me too, but I mean, it's very difficult for everyone to fully own their decisions and live with the consequences of their decisions.
Well, so hold on. There's a really good point in there. You just said it. So people are looking for someone else, a third party, to vindicate their decisions and criticize somebody else's. But when you think about it, right? The whole "we're all in this together" comment. Why would you want to? And I fully understand this. There's a lot of feeling around, well, I'd rather be right, even if the overall situation is bad, than just be wrong and say, okay, you know, we're in a better place collectively. And that, when we talk about the Karens, that's kind of exactly that mindset, right? So, you know, imagine, you know, your kid has, I don't know, asthma or allergies, whatever, can't breathe with its mask on, and you're bringing it out into public, and here comes a Karen who says, whatever, right? You don't know the situation, right? But you think you're right. So I'm just gonna, we're in it together kind of feeling, right? So, you know, as opposed to being helpful and just saying, you know, I might not, what is the greater good? Maybe the greater good is crushing that poor kid's experience. You know, what does that look like? So I think from the Karen's perspective, just to your point, it's about vindication and being right, as opposed to let's see what everyone's situation is. And I agree. I mean, I haven't been a marriage counselor or have much experience with that, but
I don't recommend it, by the way.
Yeah, I'm not
20+
looking
years.
for any of that. But I have to imagine that's a lot of what you encounter. Like, I don't care how bad the situation gets. I just want to be right. Am I?
Yeah, no, there is a lot of that, and the psychological what the psychologist's way of explaining it is that people come to you to have you tell them that the path that they're on is precisely the path that they need to be on, and you can never tell them that. It's just impossible for that to be the feedback. There's no way. I mean, if they're talking to me, then they're clearly not on the right path, at least internally.
But that's the defensive.
But no, seriously, and so, but I think there is a kind of, I mean, I'm not justifying Karens by any stretch. Like people that scream in Trader Joe's because somebody asked them to wear a mask or whatever the thing is. But there's a lot of anxiety now in a lot of different quarters. People are heavily invested in their decisions and their lifestyle choices, and then those decisions and lifestyle choices get undermined or threatened in some way, and the remedial prospects are not robust because we're in a pandemic and because the economic situation, et cetera. And so people have some basic choices, one of which is to look inward and say, okay, why am I feeling this way? What's at stake? What should I do? And, figure out some way to calm oneself down. Or the other way, which is the more common way, is to externalize the anxiety, to rush to judgment, and this has enormous implications for peace and security, right? It's, this kind of,
for sure.
Yeah.
And so that this sort of, I mean, I had to learn. I mean, there's so many things that I've learned that I wish I had learned earlier because I was a jerk. But
You're gonna have to tell us about that later, by the way, if you're saying you're a jerk.
Well, no, it's fair enough. I mean, some people think there's been no change, but moving right along. But I think that I've had to train myself to do several things that I think are important to do, and one of which is to not make decisions until I absolutely need to make them. Now, if you're a mother and your kid's in a crisis, then when you need to make them is immediately. But there are lots of other decisions that we preempt, that this kind of rush to judgment thing that is partially about being right and partially about eliminating the anxiety, the cloud of anxiety that we're all living under, which for some people is really considerable and justifiable. I don't have 4 kids in a 2-room apartment with no job. Some people's circumstances are really, really anxiety producing.
Well, the people are coming out with PTSD even from the pandemic, from what I'm hearing.
No, I mean, they are coming out with PTSD, absolutely.
Severe PTSD. But, it sounds like there's some accountability issues here also. It's just like the fact that you have to recognize yourself. And it seems like many of these people don't know how to recognize, I would say, their faults, right? This is why they're looking for vindication elsewhere. If you can't look within yourself to vindicate, then how are you going to do that? Because you're looking to put blame on others immediately.
Yeah, but it's always easier to point the finger than to look at what you're doing yourself.
Exactly.
I think it takes some, we want to talk about security IQ, takes some serious emotional IQ to be able to look at yourself. And I think everybody's guilty of it at some point, right?
Everyone's guilty of it at some point.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I've certainly rushed to judgment, but I will say, similar to Bob, I've definitely tried to hone that skill and not be so quick to make a decision or judge or engage in some sort of action that I think is going to fix the situation. I try to pause, let it sit, let it marinate, and maybe look at it with a clear head or different perspective.
Which I think is in some ways a key to leadership, right? And because, you know, one of the things that business people figure out, which the rest of us don't always, is that if you preempt decisions before you engage your team and you've vetted the different outcomes, et cetera, you're not only going to make more bad decisions, but you're going to alienate the people you need to keep in your circle.
Totally agree. Totally agree.
And so we don't, in the security field, we often don't, you know, we give in to, even if we don't have hierarchies of leadership, we have hierarchies of thinking, you know, and this has never been, you know, it's never been a good thing. And you think about like a place like the UN, which is, you know, it's sort of it's a little passive aggressive, and it's kind of, you know, buttoned down, et cetera. But there are certain things that you never hear in that space. And one of them is apologies for making wrong decisions or for not exploring consequences. You know, I mean, we don't have business plans in the UN, you know, where you try to figure,
Was it because of
okay,
egos?
what can go wrong here, which
Well,
is what a good business plan is about, right?
Right, but is it because of the egos of the people coming in? Is it because of power? Because, you know, one of the UN, or the misconception of the UN is the fact that everybody's looking for a stake in it, right? Because it just shows how great and mighty their world is. So is it because of the egos coming in to represent each respective countries? Is it just culturally? I mean, like, what do you think is causing it to be like that without?
I think what's causing it is that, I mean, there's a lot of things that are causing it, but one of the, I mean, and you know, and some of it is necessary to have 194 entities in a room trying to make common decisions, right? I mean, I used to go to school board meetings in the Bronx when I was a pastor in Harlem, and going to school board meetings in the Bronx in the 90s was just like all of these people yelling and cursing and screaming and throwing things at each other and threatening the school board and all that. I mean, it's just chaos. But it was chaos because you have lots of people that are desperately trying to get things for their children that they didn't get for themselves, and are confronting these bureaucratic impediments, and they're just losing it in these settings, right? And so it is you know, the UN is certainly calmer and more it's more polite than the Bronx, but one of the things that they have in common is, and you figure this out when you're in this room, and you know, and you're just like ducking projectiles. And, you know, I mean, it was absolutely, it was like going, like we used to have Alcoholics Anonymous meetings at the church, and they were way calmer than the school board meetings.
Wow.
But one of the thing where the school board and the UN have in common is that the buildings are full of people who actually don't make decisions.
Oh, wow.
So the women, mostly women, who would go with their kids to these school board meetings, they're assuming that the people sitting in the chairs in the front of the room actually have the power to give them what they want. But they don't have the power to give them what they want. They don't.
That's a great point. You know what?
And it's the same at the UN, right? So you have all these people that appear to be, you know, powerful and excellencies and all this other nonsense. But when you're there for a while, you realize that they actually don't have power either, that they're just reading scripts that have been written for them by somebody else in a different context.
Right.
This is not where decisions get made. This is where decisions get negotiated. That's a big difference.
That's a really good point. You know, and I've worked with city agencies for a long time, and that's the same thing that you see there. You know, you can speak to some people at very high levels within the city agency, and it's, well, we have to see if we have the budget for that, and we have to see if that's going to work for this department and that department. And it's great to collaborate and make sure that everyone's on board before you make the decision. So going back to that pause, so in the private sector, there's probably people who need to pause more and collaborate more. And in the public sector, it's probably the opposite. So when we're talking about the UN, it kind of sounds very similar to that. Nobody can really execute. Nobody can get anything done. Stuff takes 5 times as long.
Yeah.
And when we're talking about peace and security, sometimes you don't have that kind of time.
No,
right?
That's the frustration of it. Absolutely.
If things start to escalate, someone needs to create that sort of command and control, and let's hold on here. We got to make a good decision, but we also need to execute. And so where's that balance, and how do you bring both of those ends of the spectrum sort of together? That's a really interesting perspective I didn't even think about.
Yeah, because I mean, there are times when you can get your family and you can sit around the table and you can kind of work stuff out. And there are times, your kid gets bitten by a snake, and you're not going to have a family confab to figure out that you better get the kid's ass to the hospital.
Right.
That's 100% right.
We don't have that second modality at the UN, which is precisely why it's frustrating to people. And someone like Min, who is perfectly willing to sort of take responsibility and take charge when in situations where charge is required, to be in that environment. And my response over the years has been, is to sort of, like, I don't talk to the people, the diplomats at the UN all that much anymore. And I also don't talk to the kind of mafia NGOs that hang around diplomats, and
there's one in every crowd, it sounds like.
Do their issues.
Yeah.
And the reason is that I can't really believe most of what they tell me. And so it's easier for me to deal with them through writing, and it's sort of more informal, less face-to-face contacts, although I'm usually good at face-to-face contact, because I can't work with people when I can't trust what they're telling me.
Right.
Right.
I can't trust what they're telling me because they're not they're not owning what they're saying, because it's coming from somewhere else.
Right.
They're ambassadors for things. They're not things. Right. And that's a difference. And so someone like me, who is a free radical, as it were, within the system, is really problematic for them, because they don't deal with free radicals. They have a free radical free existence in that sense.
Right.
And everybody has their role, and I don't think mine is particularly wonderful either, but it's like, in the system, you need all of these checks and balances if the system is going to function effectively.
Right.
And in the UN, you need people who are going to do something other than tell you what a great job you did and pat you on the back. That are
Right.
no,
Done if you did that.
no, this isn't going to get the job done. This is not a response to that. That it may be a response to something, but that resolution does not respond adequately to that problem.
So what do you recommend then, for people to actually moving forward, especially with the next generation who's now coming on and, taking roles and leads in the UN or other organizations? What do you think should be in the back of their mind? Like what?
Well, I don't, it's a hard question, because I think that the most of the people who ask that question, in my experience, I'm sure there are others, but the question, that the subtext of that question is, how can I get ahead in this system? And
it's not even ahead, I think based on what you've described, everyone's trying to get ahead, right? Because there's an agenda on everybody's plate. You have people who are quote unquote mafia like NGOs who are hovering around, and you have others who are doing other things. In order to make a change and actually be effective about it, it's not even that. Like, what would be the base foundation for folks who are now entering that new realm, and in the back of their mind, like, all right, in order to be effective and be productive in negotiations and then hopefully make decisions later on, what should be the basic foundation that has to be there?
That's a great question, and I think that the older I get, the more convinced I am that the answer has to do in identifying attributes of character that are well suited to peace and security, and spend time cultivating those characteristics.
So speaking of characteristics then, speaking of
Yeah.
which, there's so many different, and you have all these different Clifton, exams and personality. What would be the base requirements for a characteristic? What should be the top 5 characteristics for an individual? And not calling, you have to call out names, that would be the perfect person, ideal person that would be, can be molded into something or someone who can be effective in that position or that role that you're talking about.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a really good question. I'll have to struggle a little bit off the top of my head to respond to it, but it's an excellent question. I mean, for me, one of the cardinal characteristics that I'll just say, like, what are some of the things that I look for and talk about to people who want to intern with me? And, where they got their degree from is like at the bottom of the barrel. Like, I could care less. School is school, and, school is helpful, but, there are other things that are more important to me. I think reliability is a huge issue for me. One of the things that I love about the two of you, there are many things, but you show up and you do what you say you're going to do. And, no one does that 100% of the time, but there's a real commitment to reliability that I think is really helpful. The second thing, which probably won't make any sense initially, is having a sense of humor.
Makes sense.
I can take what I do seriously, but I don't take myself seriously.
Yeah.
I just don't, and there's no reason to, because
there's no reason.
E-lister in this work, and and half of what I put out into the UN, I get back, well, it's just not realistic. And then I send back, well, so neither is the future of the UN realistic. So
you know what? It's funny, because I'm thinking of something else. When you say something's not realistic, who was it? It was Martine, actually, who supports us on our WISE efforts. But she said, the most important thing for successful people is that they think so big, or they dream so big, that it's really hard to explain it to small-minded people.
Right.
And if you can't think that big, and if you can't think totally unrealistically for the reality of the situation as it is, how do you ever move forward? So, when you say sense of humor, it's almost like it's a good way of putting it, because that is the humorous side to it. But it's more like resilience, because if you don't have that sense of humor, and somebody's telling you, oh, that's not realistic, like, that's really more resilience to say, well, I see that that's your perspective, but for me, like, this is a goal, and maybe we won't reach it, but so that's the persistence aspect.
No, we're gonna reach the goals, Lee. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, I'm saying in general.
I know.
I know we're gonna reach our goals.
We're gonna reach our goals.
Yeah, no, and I think you're right, and I think that the bigger we dream, certain things sort of follow from that. One of which is, the bigger I dream, the more I realize how many other people need to be not fitted into my dream, but need to become co-collaborators in a dream, right? That there isn't, and so that. One of the things that you see in peace and security a lot, is at the levels at which I deal with it, which is I find really unfortunate, is this rigid over subscription to certain kinds of ideas. And And so people get, you know, and you see this in therapy a lot too, right? That people come in like they're armed to the teeth with ideas about themselves and about their partners and about their mothers and whatever it is that they're dealing with. And you have to unpack that rigidity in order to any sense of it, right? And there's an institutional version of that, I think. And if you have a softer view or a more collaborative view, then you realize how many other people need to be invested in the dream, but also it raises the issue about the inclusiveness of your dream, right? It's like this is you know, like the fight against gender inequality sometimes has a very tough hide, and it's very hard. But a lot of it is about getting people to understand how much better the world would be if it's more inclusive.
Right.
And if that requires, as it has required, for me to take a back seat and promote other people into positions of authority, you know, idea authority as well as institutional authority, then that's what has to happen. I mean, there's no other way to sort of make this work.
Mm-hmm.
Leave so much talent on the sidelines, and we've done it for years and years and years under this kind of white male bullshit that has had a reissuance in the last couple of years, but I think will finally and ultimately go away. And you know, like we can't afford we can't afford that hard, rigid sense of how the world should work. And there's a lot of that in the UN, and there's a lot of it in the Security Council, which is why I spend all my time there. You know, basically, I mean, I'm accused of attacking them all the time, but it's really more like tickling them, you know, like, you know, freaking loosen up a little bit, you know.
Right.
And look,
like, you know, just like,
if you need an entourage to help you with that, I'm sure we can find candidates to help you.
No, I'm sure. I just need to be able to, you know, well, I was going to say I need to be able to get you in the room, which I think I could do if I could get myself back in the room. You know?
Are you sure you want us in the room, knowing how we are?
Well, I always bring like duct tape to cover people's mouths when they start. You know, so that's like,
that wouldn't be any fun.
Oh, it's very bad. Time for tape.
Wouldn't that be fun? The whole point of this is to tickle them.
Yeah, no, you should. It would be good. It would be good to have you if we could all kind of manage to get back in there, assuming there's an in there to get back to. It would be fun to have you all kind of sitting in that space and watching some of that silliness.
Oh my God. But it's interesting you brought up sense of humor, though. I always laugh because I always say you got to have a sense of humor in the line of work, and Elisa knows that. Otherwise, you got to work hard.
Oh God, yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah. Well, but again, it's, you know, to say you can't take some stuff too seriously. I think that's 100% right. Even in peace and security, like it's such a serious topic, and it's not something to be laughed at or take lightly. But because of all of the conflict, you need a little bit of levity to balance out some of these conversations. You know, there's so much heavy, deep stuff that you got to weed through that if you don't balance it out, it will consume you, and you know, you won't be able to see it through a clear lens, and it'll just you can't move forward with all of that weight.
Yeah. Well, it's depression. It's depressing. I mean, think about it. All that heavy stuff is depressing if you think about it. Why would you want to wallow in that? And you know, and I always make a comment about you want to learn as much as you can, but you want to educate yourself to move ahead and not repeat the same actions otherwise you get the same consequences from it, right?
Well, and you also want to give people hope, right? So even when we did our wellness webinar, we heard some stories from folks who had lived through some horrendous situations and, you know, came out on the other end better for it. So you want to give people hope no matter where they are in the world, particularly around peace and security, that there is a way to make it better. And then when you take it back to where we are, you know, maybe you're complaining because the Starbucks up the street didn't make your drink exactly the way you wanted to, like I do so many times. Right, you don't be a Karen. Just, you know, look at the grander scheme of things and where the world sits right now. The entire world is upside down, and you know, it's going to be okay. If you don't get the Starbucks the exact way you want it, it's going to be okay. This is what I tell myself all the time. So, but it's you sort of hit the nail on the head with, you have to have a sense of humor, but it is that sort of resilience, because if you can't inject a little levity into the conversation, or, you know, take a break from all that heavy conversation, then you won't survive. Not in this industry, not in the world. You need to balance it. And
No, I agree.
give people hope.
I agree.
Well, and that's why you have my little plaque that says Empress of Death, but that's another story.
Nah.
But that's also why we do this whole video cast, isn't it, man? I mean, we on a regular basis, on a daily basis, we're dealing with, you know, real projects, you know, a lot of stress, real security issues, yeah, a lot of pressures, a lot of expectations, a lot of pressures, and we do this to show, like, look, it's all going to be okay. You know, we can laugh about it, we can joke about it,
Exactly.
and there are people to help you. There are people you can reach out to, like Bob, like Lee, like everyone who's sort of pitching in and keeping these conversations and the hope going and moving forward.
And
Yeah.
but you know,
Do you all know, does the name Madeleine LEngle mean anything to you?
Madeline, no, not for me. No.
Do you know A Wrinkle in Time? Have you heard?
Oh yes.
Yes.
Oh yes.
Children's book. Okay. Well, she did that and a whole bunch of other books.
Oh wow.
I brought her up just because in the 80s, I was living at Cathedral St. John the Divine, as was she.
Oh wow. Okay.
And we had apartments. Mine was more like a boiler room, but we had apartments kind of next to each other. And you know, and talked a lot about the state of the world and things that were happening and not happening, and fears and anxieties and all the rest of it.
Right.
And she would every once in a while, I said, well, you know, how do you cope? And she said, well, I go out. I said, do you just go out and have a good cry every once in a while? And she goes, no, I go out and have a good laugh.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great.
And, you know, that was very instructive, because she just couldn't continue to do the work that she was there to do. If, you know, unless she could kind of release that was the energy that she needed to release. It wasn't the sadness energy that got overindulged, as it sometimes does for us, right? But it was the sort of, you know, this is all a comic.
Did you ever hear, I can't remember, he was a Navy officer, I can't think of his name. It's the guy who gives that famous speech about making your bed. Anyway, at the end of his speech, he talks about how during Hell Week for Navy SEAL training, they make all the guys sit in the mud, and it's freezing cold, and you know, the wind is beating them in the face, and they're waiting for some of the guys to quit, right? To stand up, get out of the mud and quit. And he tells a story about how there was one Hell Week where everyone was just suffering immensely, and they're, you know, it's in the middle of the night, freezing cold, and they hear their teeth chattering, and then they hear like one voice, and he's singing some song, probably some Navy song, and it's horribly out of tune, but then all of a sudden one becomes two voices, and then it becomes five voices. And that's exactly the same thing, like whether it's a good laugh or just a song or whatever, it's something to bring people together and lift the human spirit. That's how we get out of the mess that we're in, whether it's, you know, human trafficking or coronavirus or riots or whatever it is. That's how we get out of this mess. So
But the other thing is also thinking positively. I mean, I've talked to so much people, and there's like this, and I think you nailed it, the lack of hope. There's got to be some positivity, you know, throughout all this that we've all encountered. You know, the fact that Elisa hasn't killed her significant other is positive, right?
Dude, I'm incredibly hopeful now. I mean, I thought things were good before. Now I'm like, wow, I could do this for a while longer.
Right. And then the other thing is, you know, the coronavirus has forced people to learn how to actually cook, especially millennials who has.
Oh, I still don't know how to cook.
Well, you also brought.
Yeah, no, I think you're overstretching that one. Yeah, but fair enough.
Listen, Min, don't start showing off your skills again. By the way, I don't mean to do this, and we might have to edit this piece out, but I have to get in my car to go make a chiropractor. I had an emergency chiropractor appointment the last 2 days because I can barely move. So you're going to be on the move.
We and Brian have been very.
What part of your body? What happened?
It's all cervical. I have what the hell is it called?
I don't know.
Some sort of syndrome. I have like a lot of inflammation in my neck. I'm completely stressed out, which, I mean, I didn't have power for a week and I was out of my house, so no wonder. But it just, the joints in my neck keep popping out. Yeah, I've been a mess for the last couple of days, but it's getting better.
We have a tour of Elisa's house, so you know it's great. And today we have the tour.
Oh, do you want to see? Do you want to see the new? Do you want to see the new addition? Hold on, he's very handsome. Say hi.
Oh, I love that face.
And look at his bow tie. You see his bow tie?
Yeah, it's adorable. Oh, I want to play with the kitty.
So the cat beats up the giant English Mastiff. He like whacks him in the face, and then they eat out of the same bowl. It's the freaking cutest thing ever.
Oh my God, they'll be best friends later on.
Totally.
That's what happens.
Yeah, here I have a cat. There's wanders the yard and possums, so they fight all the time. So.
Yeah.
My dog cannot.
I'll be right back.
Animals, otherwise, my dog is not very.
Oh yeah, your dog.
Not very animal friendly.
Not very animal friendly.
Is like one of the demons from hell if he sees another animal.
He yeah, we chase squirrels in the morning.
What happened?
He's literally massacred a chipmunk in front of me. After the chipmunk ran in front of me, he scooped it up and crushed it in his jaws, and I had to make him spit it out. Yeah, it's my dog is not very animal friendly with other animals, if that says anything.
Is it at least child friendly?
He is child friendly. My kids have written up. He loves my kids. He's very protective of the kids. So I have a Shiba Inu, which is a Japanese breed.
It's a beautiful dog. He really is very handsome.
Yeah. I got him from the New York City Shiba Rescue that I help out with constantly as well. But he's one of the closest breeds genetically to a wolf, the oldest breed to the wolf. The lineage is impossible. So I can't have a wolf because it's considered a wild animal, but the closest I can have is, that's what I did. I got a Shiba Inu. Elisa, you're muted, my dear.
Are now?
I know because can you see me?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I know because my radio was blasting. I didn't want you to hear it.
That's all right. We'll see Bob over there bumping his head up and down, dancing to it. So
listen, I just didn't want it to be Howard Stern.
That's
usually Howard Stern.
That's all right.
Is Howard on?
No, I shut it off.
Oh, okay.
Oh my God. So Bob, you have to tell us why you're a jerk and why people deem you a jerk now. What's the story behind that?
I think probably, I can't speak for other people, but I think that if people see me as a jerk now, it's because they don't appreciate the sort of independence, which I am pretty jealous about preserving, the independence of my office and the independence of the, I don't allow authorities to sort of intervene in my ideas or what I see.
That's great.
But I don't spend a lot of time bashing or beating up people. I don't find it very helpful to do that, so I don't do it.
But that's not being a jerk.
No, it's it's in the eyes of the beholder. But I think that the way in which I have been a jerk in the past is the same.
Who hasn't been a jerk though? Who seriously?
Yeah.
Who hasn't been a jerk at some point in their life?
No. I totally agree. But the fact that other people are a jerk doesn't make my jerkiness any less of a problem. But I think that the reason, there's lots of reasons, but the sort of the underlying reason, it's the same for other people. a lot of other people, and it goes back all the way back to the Karen thing, that, you know, it was just a basic failure on my part, and I didn't, you know, I mean, it's part of how I grew up. It's part of a lot of things. I mean, you know, I was 6 years old and was in kindergarten, and they asked me to name my, you know, share my name with the class, and I thought my middle name was Moron because I'd been called that so often as a child. I mean, I thought it was on my birth certificate. So so there was a sense of me of not really kind of owning myself, in the sense of, you know, taking myself seriously enough to figure out what the impact of me might be on other people.
Mhm.
And at a certain point, you have to be, I think, willing to recognize the while we don't, I certainly don't have all the power in the world, and am not right all the time by any stretch and whatever, but I have the ability to affect people for good or ill.
Mhm.
and need to be conscious of that, so that I make sure that I'm having the impact that I have, as much as possible. And that failure, for the early parts of my life was really problematic. You know, I mean, we all occasionally encounter people who just like fundamentally don't get themselves.
Mhm.
And I was one of those people. So and consequences flowed from that. So you know, without going into specific jerkiness, which I would be happy to do another time if you want to chronicle that, the basic issue was, you know, just like, you know, I didn't have any sense of my own authority. I mean, Min, I think I told you this once before. I mean, one of the reasons at a point in my life when I could have had children, why I didn't have children, is because I couldn't tolerate the thought of another me. And so
I remember you saying that.
didn't have children because I didn't want to see that. You know, I figured, well, I can put an end to this by just not having children.
By not having children.
Yeah, no, and I'm not defending it. It's just how it's how I thought of myself at a particular point in my life.
But I have to say, I mean, it sounds like you've changed that perspective, or you've changed your view of yourself, meaning like you like yourself now, don't you? Because we all like you. I mean, you know, we think.
No, I think it's much better. And you know, having had, you know, 50 godchildren, which I now do, and lots of nieces and nephews and interns and stuff, I wish I could do more to take some of these issues off the plates of younger people. You know, I think that they've just got too much that they're, you know, when they look to their future, there's too many barriers, too many threats. And I think that my generation has been much more self-indulgent than we've allowed ourselves to believe. And one aspect of the self-indulgence is, you know, is not looking at the future and saying, you know, we've got to resolve some of this stuff so that younger people don't have to deal with it. You know, we've pushed too many issues into the future and not dealt with them in the present. And I talk to diplomats and I say, well, you know, this is like a mother that refuses to read to her 5-year-old. You know, I mean, it's just like, you read to your 5-year-old because you want there are things that happen if you don't do that, and skills that children don't have, and relationship bonds and all the rest of it. So, and we just haven't done a good enough job, and we're seeing the fruits of that now. So I feel really badly about that, actually.
I think you've done quite a bit to actually improve. I think you've done a bit already. I don't think you should feel bad. I'll just put it that way. Best thing to do is baby steps, which I think you acknowledged. And I think based on the fact that you're already attempting and trying and talking to people is one of the key things in changing people's mindset, right? So without that, I think you wouldn't have done anything, but you've done quite a bit. And so that being said, I don't think there should be any regrets. We're still learning from you. I know I am. I mean, I hear a lot of stories from you, and it's just like, oh my God, I can't believe that happened.
Well, here's another thought. You know, how boring would the world be if everyone just came out perfect? Everyone came out the same. Everyone was totally nurtured in every single way. And, you know, everyone liked, you'd have no color to it. You know, a lot of what makes us all interesting is the conflict and the friction that we created in our own lives.
The drama, baby, the drama.
I mean, and listen, I am very anti-drama. I can't stand drama, but to go through an experience, particularly the tougher experiences, those are the ones that tend to stick with you and make you, I guess, who you are ultimately. You know, when you go through, we were just talking about the Navy SEALs, when you go through Hell Week, think about how you feel about yourself after you make it out on the other side. You can't have that feeling of growth and accomplishment without some sort of battle in your own life.
No, totally. That's totally right.
And so how boring would the world be, would life be in general, if we didn't have the opportunities to battle and figure out who we are and what we're made of and how strong we are and what we can offer and what we can teach other people. And everyone, such a believer in this, everyone has something to teach. Everyone has something to offer. So, and if you look at it that way, Bob, you think about all that you've offered other people because you had to go through what you had to go through, because you had to be a jerk for a little while and you had to figure it out. You know, you've saved so many people that same experience just by sharing your life with them. That's a great thing. That's the best thing anyone could offer anyone.
I agree.
Yeah, well, thank you. I, you know, it's hard to know, and there are people in my business, probably in your business too, who are so convinced of their own goodness and righteousness and wisdom and contributions. And there's some staggering egos in my
always
staggering. Oh my God.
Look, you know what? There's egos everywhere. Let's just put it that way. And it's entertaining. But you know what? Like Madeleine, I believe you said, you got to have a good laugh, right? You just have to go out and laugh. And
no, you just have to have a good laugh. And that whole issue of color that Elisa raised is just right. Just spot on, you know? Like the world would be so freaking boring.
For sure.
If everybody acted like the diplomats, you know, where everything is, you know, your clothes are pressed and your words are measured and your outcomes are, you know, half of what they need to be and all the rest of it, right? I mean, color is great. It's what
I
makes
agree.
life interesting. I totally agree. I mean, Mitch was saying about how, you know, like you don't have a filter. Well, I mean, you have some filter, but not much of a filter. But it's
I got no filter.
It's precisely what makes you interesting to be around.
No, I have no filter.
No, because you don't have a filter. Because it's just, you know, it's just you just don't know what is going to be coming out next. You know, and it could be anything.
You see what you get. You get what you see. That's it.
Yeah, no, seriously.
I don't want to cut this too short, but I actually have to jump on another call and I got to go into my appointment.
Yeah, no, I have to go too, and we're done with the hour. But I love you both, and I look forward to seeing you when I can see you.
And we're going to do this again, right?
Yes.
Absolutely, whenever you want.
All right.